So if the first part was the context of the project, the methodologies, the creative and critical thinking, the second part is the object-based learning, and then the third part of what I wanted to do with you today is our visual thinking strategies. And I think Colleen will very much sort of pick up on some of these things as well in her session later. So I mentioned that this, just as we came to the end of the session with the objects, that the objects that we shared with you today, I say they're all here, either here or on the Chester BT display over there. These were all either purchased online or as part of packs through an organisation that sadly is no longer in business called Articles of Faith. But there are other, some of you probably are aware of TTS. They also have collections of religious and sacred artefacts. I put the Islamic ones together. I think this is about the fourth or fifth Islamic handling box I've created. But you can buy sort of pre-organised kits of sacred objects anyway, and also various types of historical objects. My sort of go-to place really is Amazon as well, for lots of objects. So you'll see that things like the Tibetan prayer flags can be purchased online, handling bags, so things like these little canvas bags are really great for putting collections of objects in. They're quite good. When I unveiled this object here, that was in a box, but often I put objects inside bags so that when you take them out, you've got that sort of sense of curiosity that's inspired because it's hidden and it's within a bag. So we've got objects also relating to materials, so how that's specifically more relating to the collections of the Chester Beatty, where we're looking at manuscript collections, so things like quills and lapis, so pigments and materials, how things are made. You can see our sort of Chinese brushes and inks, and then you can even see the start of our next handling bag and handling objects, which will be for our journeys. Our journeys trail as well. So we find that's basically the pretty much the sort of go-to place of how I can put these together. And part of what we'll do as part of the project is, I think, look at giving some hints and tips about putting collections together. And then even things like the little keychain, again, that we use for sacred texts. So the little Book of Psalms there as well that one of you had. So that's just giving you a little bit of practical hints and tips before we carry on. So we're going to carry on now with this idea of visual thinking, visual literacy. It's something I've used a lot in my museum education career, and particularly to use in conjunction with different objects. So I often use a visual literacy activity or a visual thinking activity as an icebreaker or as an introduction to a topic. It's often quite a good way to get children grouped around an image, and also just gets them looking and thinking. So so please also forgive me if I'll use the terms visual literacy and visual thinking interchangeably, but all of these are about, again, questioning, thinking, developing ideas, open responses. I think this is really the main thing, and this has been one of the challenges that we've had with training the guides in the museum, in the Chester BT Library, where they're very used to doing a very formal type of tour and presentation, where of course what we want to do is encourage open-ended questions. And it's the open-ended questions that take us back to our critical thinking, our creative thinking, our collaboration, are working together. And also that idea that Jenny talked about in her presentation about the, building respect, understanding each other, listening to each other, responding to each other, and respecting each other's diversity, diverse backgrounds, different experiences, different life experiences, whatever and wherever they may have originated from. So yeah, we're going to think about a little bit about how we build this into something practical. Because it's all very well for me to show you this slide, and you've got it in your packs, of what's going on in this picture, what makes you say that, what more can we find? Because it's that really breaks it down very simply. But again, I'm just going to show you another video, and hopefully now I've worked it out, this should go a little bit more smoothly. So this is from Boston Museum of Fine Art.
What I like about VTS is when I raise my hand and Mr. Timberlake calls on me and I have lots to say.
What's going on in this picture? Lots of hands today. If you need to take a closer look, you're more than welcome to. VTS stands for Visual Thinking Strategies. It's a way of thinking about art. It poses 3 questions to students who are looking at art, and those 3 questions are, what's going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can you find? Okay, let's take about 20 more seconds.
We have several partner schools, both private, independent, as well as public schools. And what we do is we train classroom teachers in the visual thinking strategies methodology and get them up to speed in terms of how to engage their students with works of art on a regular basis in their classroom. And we recommend that they do this 9 times throughout the year. And then their 10th lesson takes place at the museum in the galleries where they engage their students in VTS discussions with real works of art.
What VTS does is warms kids up to get them ready to be critical thinkers. Students learn to be centered on their own learning. They learn to be involved in their own learning. I also think that students learn language skills. They learn listening skills from listening to one another. They also learn point of view. By listening to each other, they learn that someone else's point of view could be different than theirs, and they consider other points of view.
Okay, Maya.
I agree with Laura about all the lines pointing to one main point in the picture, but I disagree about how she thinks it might be pointing at the fog at the top. I feel like instead it's pointing at the man in the center, because
when we bring the students into the museum, they are very much in awe, of all the paintings and of the architecture of the building itself, of what the museum experience is all about. And then to their surprise, of course, when they come to an image, especially one that they have seen within the classroom, they're very much surprised at how much more they can see.
The guy rowing the boat, I think he's frightened because the way his head is tilted up, it looks like he's more aware of what's going on. And also by the way he's holding the paddles, it looks like he's clutching them tighter.
Okay, so you're commenting on the fisherman and that you think that perhaps he's frightened because of the way he's clutching the oars and the way he's tilting his head and looking.
I think that visual thinking strategies changes the role of the teacher from the imparter of the knowledge to the facilitator of the knowledge.
With, minimal training but lots of practice, any teacher who's very good at engaging kids can be great at this.
Okay. And what do you see in the picture, Manuel, that makes you say that this person is giving something to this person? I think VTS offers teachers an opportunity to stand back and allow their students to develop their own language, develop their own thinking about art. And for that reason, I really enjoy using VTS in the classroom.
In fact, sometimes what happens is the general public who's walking by will stop and just stare and be mesmerized by the degree to which kids are engaged and really, paying attention and looking deeply with keen interest in a work of art. Everybody's hands are raised, people want to talk, and they have so much to say. It's a wonderful thing to see kids so engaged for extended periods of time like this with works of art, with masterpieces.
VTS makes a point of not relying on any prior art knowledge. You don't need it. So because of that, it's 100% accessible. The simplicity of it allows you to get to nuance. You get to depth. The kids will always find it. It's like it never fails.
Claudia, that the storm is going away. I think it's only going to get worse because of the way.
There are some images that we look at every year. And what I love about VTS is every class sees it completely differently all the time. And they get to these completely, sometimes fantastic conclusions. But it all works because they're working and they're talking and they're I don't know, it's empowering to them, to my students.
So that gives us a perspective from both teachers and museum educators of how it works for them. They very much used it in the context of art education. I very much, and Jenny very much, use it in the context of looking at religious works. I don't just look at big paintings, I use it for maps, I use it for all sorts of different, and you can use it, if you're looking at higher, so secondary age pupils, you can use it to look at propaganda, some posters, ephemera. So there's all sorts of angles in which you can just take these basic concepts. So we're going to hand around some images to give you a go. So let's just get the images around each table first of all. So once you've got your images, there'll be sort of one image per 2 or 3 of you, so you can work on a much closer basis. So you were sort of doing much more kind of group work because we've got quite big tables. So share around the images, find another person or 2 people to work with. And decide between you who is going to take the role of the facilitator. And that's one really key word that came out for me. And in the work that I do in museum education, we very much don't call ourselves teachers, we tend to call ourselves mediators and facilitators. So has everybody decided who will, in your 2 or 3, who will take the role of the mediator, who will be the pupil? Mediator, pupil. So it's the role of the mediator. I'm going to keep using this. The person who starts off as the mediator, you are the person who is guiding. So you are the facilitator. You are enacting the role as the teacher. Please allow your pupils to speak, to share ideas before you move on to the next question. Okay, so this is going through different layers. So the visual literacy element of this is that at a very basic level, you're looking at what you can see. What is in front of you? What are the different elements? I use this, I do an activity as well with Egyptian tomb paintings. You saw in that video they were using an Egyptian papyrus. So you're just really picking out the individual details. Personally, I have an issue with what do you do that makes you say that? I just think you can just ask why. Why is it? It's a bit wordy. I think it's quite American. What makes you? And then it's like, and also again, the what more can we find? It's like, well, what's happening here? And then actually you can start to, why are those elements fitting together in that way? So think of it more like, adapt it and use it, but think of it in those different levels. You're going through to get greater depth, elicit more ideas as you go through. Right, 2 minutes, 3 minutes for the first set of mediators. So you can use this, as a 3 or 6 minute icebreaker. You could use it as a much more extended activity, depending on what image you've chosen, how you're going to introduce it in relation to the topic you might be addressing. So that just gives you a little insight into starting to use and work with images. Nobody put up their hands when Jenny asked, do you use visual learning or visual literacy? But have you used images in that way before? Yeah, so of course, yeah. So you'll see that you've probably have used images in the classroom. It's just giving it a name or a terminology that connects with both classroom learning and museum learning, and hopefully gives you an idea about how to build this visual literacy into something else. So, some of the outcomes of VTS are all of these things. You were brainstorming, you were comparing, you were evaluating. In some way, you're also presenting your thoughts and ideas. You can take that further to develop into research skills, so thinking a bit more around the image or the subject that you were using. And the key thing here, and this is what we're building into our own project, is the other things that you add on to working with objects or working with images. So you then extend that into writing, you extend that into literacy, you extend that into art, which we'll see in a moment with our practical session. So just from that springboard of working with a few objects or a few images, you can develop a whole topic or a whole area around the curriculum that enables your pupils to share thoughts and ideas as well. I just want to finish up my part of the session today with just a reference to the Chester BT Libraries collection. So the digital collections that we mentioned are here online. So you go to chesterbt.ie, collections online. And I just personally, this is just one of my favourite images in the collection, which is from the Gospel of Matthew and Mark from Ethiopia. But it's just a really beautiful image. Not only is it, you can connect that to stories from the Bible and Christianity, but it's a really good example of working with these visual literacy or visual thinking strategies as well. And then also we would use that, and one way I would then use that to connect with, say, object-based learning is thinking about, so I showed you my shopping list of objects, be thinking about how and why we make journeys, what we use to go on journeys. So that's where you could introduce things like compasses, and you could introduce other images or models of boats and ships, and start to think about the bigger questions that are very relevant today around migration as well. So you're then developing through quite not a circuitous route, but actually quite a linear route from starting with a comfortable, safe ground of objects and images, to start thinking about exploring some bigger concepts and ideas. So that more or less brings me to the end of what I wanted to share with you in terms of my role within the project and what I do. So if anybody wants to get in contact with me, I think my details are somewhere, but that's my website. And yeah, just please keep an eye on the Chester Beatty Library and the Education Authority for all the updates on the project as well. And if anybody wants to have a discussion about buying objects, sourcing objects, using images, connecting the two together, then just let me know. So, yes, thank you.